Welcome everybody, my designation is Novak and I'm here to distract you with a review with the spoilers of Tears of the Kingdom. Do you ever want to forget your favorite game so you can play it again for the first time? That's what Tears of the Kingdom is to Breath of the Wild. It's a similar game, in a similar vein, but even better, and the feeling, the experience of playing it is just like playing Breath of the Wild for the first time, because the exploration in this game feels amazing. There's an entire world that's unexplored even when we already played in this Hyrule, and there's a lot of histories that I want to talk about. You return to Hyrule with the Sky Islands and the Underworld, because, spoilers, there's an Underworld. The feeling of exploration, it's brand new. I do have some nitpicks about it, and I'm gonna talk about it later on, but just to start, let's begin with where the game starts, which is the exploration under Hyrule Castle with Zelda. And I have to say, I'm a little bit disappointed they didn't have the animal that appeared in the trailer, because I wanted to see how they walked carrying their items on what it looked like. It was like a dinosaur kind of hippopotamus rhinoceros thing, which I thought there would be like a mechanic of carrying things on animals like that. I'm a little bit disappointed that that didn't appear in the game, but you start with the story of what's happening around Hyrule, with the story of Zelda and Link going down. You can play that, it's not just a cutscene. You can go and investigate and walk around under the Hyrule Castle, and you find some ruins, which, and this is gonna make many YouTubers happy, are Zonai ruins. And Zonai are a really important part of this game apparently, because every single part of the game, every little bit has something to do with the Zonai. The weapons, the islands, the ruins, the items that you gather, everything is Zonai. And honestly, that part I don't like that much, because I guess I said it on the gameplay, it clashes with my headcanon. The thing with the Zonai, when there were a couple of Zonai videos around the time that Breath of the Wild came out, I wasn't very interested in those videos, because it felt just like fan fiction out of an armor and an abandoned area in the game, and I was feeling like it didn't match with, well, I guess all of us have a Hyrule and a World of Zelda in our minds that is not the same, because Zelda is pretty vague when it comes to lore. Developers always think about the gameplay before the story, so that leaves a lot of plot holes, but at the end of the day it's a great game and the story is still engaging. And it's interesting because it goes back to the exploration part of things, where you feel that you find new details about the lore by going to new places, and there's so many new places to go. There's, as I said, there's caves, there's islands, and there's the main Hyrule that it's now changed, because the entire place feels like new. Well, the main points of Death Mountain and Hyrule Castle and the Great Plateau and Heber Mountain and Dwelling Peaks, but at the end, the places in between those pinpoints of the map is really changed. There's a lot of debris from the Sky Islands, which changes the environment quite a lot, and it makes a big part of the story. I haven't played yet to that point, but there's a lot of talk about the circular debris that fell on top of Kakariko, and I guess that's gonna be a big part of the story. So the world feels completely different. It's not like playing Breath of the Wild again at all. The story, as I said, is really engaging, and it gets a lot of things, of bits from old lore, new lore, the Zonai lore, that I guess was really expanded by fans during all the theorizing time they had in between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. This game has so many Easter eggs, so many references to previous games, because it takes place in a weird part of the timeline where it is a sequel to every single other game, which doesn't make sense, but okay. Even just Link humming the songs of previous games while he's cooking, and just the bombs from Skyward Sword, and the Licks, like I don't know how to pronounce them, but I don't remember seeing them in an advanced 3D game, because like they were in Ocarina of Time, but they were also in A Link to the Past, A Link Awakening, I think. And they eat your shield, but here they don't eat your shield. Here they are like these weird, disgusting monsters that have like a huge kidney stone in their mouth. It's weird and it's cool. And I can't wait to see which other enemies are coming back, because apparently, according to the trailer, there are Redeads, and Redeads are the creepiest enemy in any Zelda game. And I can't wait to find them for the first time and be creeped out. And just the starting area of the game, it's just a throwback to every other Zelda game where it starts in a cave, going, well, Link to the Past. When you start the game in the castle to escape with Zelda to the little temple church thing that was at the end of the corridor, at the end of the secret passage. And I found a staircase in the temple that looks just like the one where you start jumping around with Wolf Link. There's enemies from previous games, there's creatures from previous games, there's little Easter eggs of music going while you're on the main area, just like in Breath of the Wild, but also while Link is cooking and humming around. There's so many things to see. If you've played any other Zelda game, there's a little bit of everything. In the trailer even, there was this, I haven't found it, I haven't seen it, I can't wait to see it. There's this floating boat that reminds me to the Ghost, is it called the Ghost ship or the Spirit ship from Phantom Hourglass and the Wind Waker? There's, well, we also saw the Gleeok remade in the trailer, and I also can't wait to see that one. I don't know which others are coming back, but it apparently seems like every other enemy is coming back, because Leaks are coming back. Like that's such a weird thing to have in a new Zelda. I'm just so glad that there's variety in enemies. And let's not even talk about bosses, because I've only found one mini boss. I don't know if it counts as mini, but one boss in the starting area, that is the one that we saw in the trailer, that's a bunch of boxes that change shape. It has different stages when you fight it, just like the old-timey bosses. So it's not a Talus that throws stones at you, or a Hynel, or a Lionel that uses his shield and his sword and his arrows. No, this guy, in all Nintendo fashion, and it feels so good because it has its weak spot, which is fun, and it moves around, and it's hard to hit, and it's entertaining to play against, and it changes the patterns of attack. It just gives me so many throwbacks. It's so great to see the love put in this game, and the little details for fans of the entire saga that have been playing this game for ages. Actually, my nitpick is that there's a lot of conflicting information, because they talk about the imprisonment war. It was really important back in the day with the old manuals, and now they're kind of developing upon it, but it changes things that we knew about it. They talk about the first king of Hyrule, and that doesn't match with what we saw in Skyward Sword. They talk about the first civilization of Hyrule back as if they were the Zonai, but we saw in Skyward Sword they were Hylians. So there's a lot of information that is conflicting, and I hope there's a lot of theories working on it. Everyone has to be working on it, because I really want to know how it matches with the things that we had already established in the story and the Lord of Zelda. But as I said, the story is just a complement of the exploration of the game. And as I said again, there are caves. There's an entire underworld that you learn about when you do the mission of the camera. And I think I screamed the first time I fell down and I realized, oh my god, there's an entire world in here, just like in the first Zelda, where the dungeons were the underworld. I haven't gotten to the point that we are playing dungeons. I don't know if we're playing dungeons. I think we will be, based on the little hints they've been throwing. I haven't seen any information on it, but I bet there's gonna be dungeons. They seem like they listen to the fans, and our first and main complaint was no dungeons. So I can't wait until I get to my first dungeon. I haven't played much, and yet I've been so entertained. There's so many things that take your attention. Maybe it's my ADHD, but I get distracted every single time I go out of Lookout Landing. And well, Lookout Landing is the main town that you go to visit, where Pura is, where is the main base of operations of the entire Hylians that saw the castle float in the air. And that's another thing that feels really nice in this game. People pay attention to what's happening around, because if I have something that's been annoying me since the first Zelda I played, is that people around don't feel like they are interacting with what's happening in the world. If you remember, on Ocarina of Time, everyone moved after the 7 years of being trapped in the castle, but they don't really talk about it. It's just like, oh yeah, we're in a new place. If you think about Majora's Mask, well, people were ignoring the moon crashing into the ground. If you think about Twilight Princess, people didn't seem to care much about the Twilight taking over Hyrule. It felt like they weren't aware of what was happening around it, and it was just Link that was going on his adventure and trying to solve things that no one else cared about. But here you can see everyone was looking when the castle floats in the air. Everyone is taking action. Everyone is creating like parties to go against the moblins, protection against the monsters that are appearing. They are investigating the Zona ruins. They're looking around to find information about the floating islands. So it feels like this world is more alive than previous games. And even in Breath of the Wild, you could feel like, yes, there was a toll on the world 100 years ago, but it was already kind of forgotten. Everyone went on with their lives. In this one, people are invested in the story that's happening, and their investment on it makes us as players feel more invested in it too. And the way they do it is that the missions, you feel like every mission is a little bit more of discovering what's around. At the same time, the other characters do, and I can't reinforce this enough. It feels amazing because that's what Zelda should have been all along. That's what Zelda was at the start, the exploration part. That's what Breath of the Wild should have been. And don't get me wrong, Breath of the Wild has always been one of my favorite games, if not my favorite Zelda, because it was such a new experience to play around. When I was playing Breath of the Wild, I felt like it was nice to explore. I went also invested in that world for a long time. I had over 400 hours of gameplay on that game. But at the same time, it wasn't Zelda enough for me. I enjoyed it, it's my favorite game as a game, but as a Zelda, was lacking on a couple of parts. And this one makes up for it big time. They gave us an underworld, they gave us an overworld, they gave us the floating islands, they gave us weapons and way of crafting, which isn't that accurate to what crafting is in most video games, but it feels that it's a nice way to incorporate the idea of fighting monsters and getting loot and using the loot. Because I hoarded so much loot in Breath of the Wild, but here I feel like I don't have enough. Back in Breath of the Wild, I just had ore and I had monster parts and I had insects and I had everything, and it just started to pile up, and I didn't feel like I could keep doing it because it didn't feel rewarding enough, you know? But in this one, you see that there's a monster there and you want to go and defeat it because you know the loot it's gonna give you is gonna be good enough to craft more weapons. And I think it was Arlo who said that that was the way to go. It was the idea of going there and defeating the monsters to get loot so you can improve your weapons once they break, so that you can keep invested in getting new weapons and crafting new weapons and killing more monsters. You get an incentive to fight, and that fight gives you a reward that's usable in game. They also improve the economy of Hyrule, where you don't need to sell your stuff anymore that much, because the most valuable things is the ore that you start getting. You get the Zonite, which is an ore that can evolve into crafting materials, into getting new Zonite devices. You can invest it on improving your batteries. And I just realized they changed the magic bar into batteries. Oh, that's what it was. I have to talk about what I don't like about this game, which is the technology part of it. I like my magical adventures to stay magical. I don't like when they ground them in real life. And I feel that implementing batteries, implementing technology, grounds it in real life. I prefer Zelda to stay a magical place, because if I see a rocket, and that kind of disappointed me in the trailer, if I see a rocket I can start thinking about, oh well, they have iPads, they have rockets, it's just like a normal real life, and it stops being magical, it stops being interesting. The game hasn't stopped being interesting, but I feel that if it keeps going this way, it stops having that magical attribute of, well, we have magic. We've always had a magic bar, and I guess this change of magic bar for battery bar is just a design choice, but it's the same concept. I would prefer a magic bar than an energy, a battery bar, because it makes it feel more, well, magical. But again, you can use that new ore to improve your magic meter, or well, your energy meter for the Zonai devices. And it feels great because it gives you a reason to go and look for ore. And the sapphires, the rubies are so overpowered, I always die with them. But it's so great to see they have a real using game. Because before it was just like, oh yes, we got some, we sell them, we get a lot of money. Here it feels like you don't want to sell the ore because you know in battle it's gonna be really useful if you don't kill yourself with it. And as I said, the economy of the game improves a lot because you go out, you craft, you get your Zonite, you exchange it for something that's useful in game, so it doesn't feel stale. It feels like you have a reason to keep going out and keep fighting monsters and keep looking for loot and keep getting new ore. So that part is really engaging, and it changes the way you play the game compared to Breath of the Wild. Another really interesting thing in the game is that there's a couple of things that are coming back from Breath of the Wild, like the Sheikah Slate, which now is the Pura pad to make it look more like the Switch, and it incorporates the same kind of abilities that it had before, as the camera, the compendium. Things are coming back as they were before, and if you have a Switch with the Breath of the Wild save file in it, you can get your horses back. You go to the stable and they're waiting for you, you have your old horses. I just wish they could do the same thing for people that played it on Wii U, because I was one of the 5 people that bought the Wii U and got Zelda on the Wii U. And not just that, but also transferring the ore from Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom. I have so many rubies, I have so many sapphires, I have so much salt from Breath of the Wild that I want to have here in Tears of the Kingdom, and it would be so good if I could just copy the data from my Wii U to my Switch and have the things that I looked for, the things that I got on Breath of the Wild, and have a use for them here in Tears of the Kingdom. That would be an amazing thing to do. Nintendo, if there's a small chance that you're looking at this small starting channel, please make it happen. Please let us transfer our items from Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom, and please let us change our stuff from the Wii U to the Switch. Anyway, rant over. It feels like a second chance to relive an amazing experience and to improve on it, because I can't repeat it enough, there is an entire underworld. So the only thing left to say is, I hope you come back and let me distract you on my next video, because I need to go and explore it and try to find my first dungeon. Bye!